I read a book every single week, and I do so because I strongly believe reading is one of the most important things you can do to become a better person. So after more than a year of working through some of the most raved about books out there, I wanted to take you through the books that I would recommend to become a more well-rounded person through literature. I've also made a full list of all the books I read, categorized them by life skills. So if you want access to that, the link is in the description. So to become a more grateful person, you're going to read these 3 books. First on this list is When Breath Becomes Air. And this is one of the best books I've read in a very long time. If you've got this version of a life that you want to live in your head and you keep deferring it, whether it's a conversation, a decision, making a move, and you need something that actually just pushes you to do it instead of just thinking about it, this book will make you do that. The author was a neurosurgeon at Stanford, and at the cusp of his career, he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He was 36 years old, and he wrote this book while he was dying. I really like this book. I'd 100% recommend it to anyone watching. You'll get through it quickly, you'll cry at least once, and then you will absolutely go ahead and do that thing that you've been putting off for a while. Second book, Man's Search for Meaning. This book bridges gratitude and resilience. The author, he was a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps. And what he observed is that whilst sure physical health and luck were factors, the survivors were often actually the ones who had found a specific meaning in their lives. They were the ones who had a why to live for. This book is essentially a masterclass in the idea of having a sense of purpose being the one thing that truly makes us unbreakable. And he goes on to explain the core ways one can find meaning in their own lives. And third is 4,000 Weeks. The subtitle for this book is Time and How You Use It. And sounds like a productivity book, but it's more of a philosophical approach to productivity. The whole book, it starts from this slightly unsettling thought that if you live to about 80, you only get around 4,000 weeks on Earth. And therefore, how you choose to manage your time on Earth is actually very important. But it's not really about being super productive or hustling or achieving more. It's more about understanding that you're not going to get through everything and you're not going to have the time for everything. And to be a bit kinder to yourself about that, and then intentionally spend the time that you do have. So it's a very fresh take on productivity. And for me personally, it made me stop stressing out about the things that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things that I used to stress about. Then, to think better about money and wealth building, you are going to read first, Die with Zero. This whole book is built around one idea, and that is the real waste isn't spending too much money, it's dying with too much. Sounds weird, sounds reckless on paper, but the argument that Bill Perkins makes is actually one that really resonates with me. He introduces this concept in the book also of memory dividends, and that is that the experiences you have when you're young and healthy, they keep paying you back in joy for the rest of your life in a way that compound interest, which I talk about a lot in my other videos on this channel, doesn't. He also has some very other ideas, very contradictory to most personal finance advice, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. Next, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. This whole book is a collection of his ideas on money, happiness, and how to think about both. And his main reframe is that wealth isn't money, it's the freedom to spend your time how you want. For me, the light bulb moment in this book is when he broke down the concept of leverage when it comes to your effort and how you can multiply your effort through things like code, things like capital, things like media in ways that didn't exist 20 years ago. It just makes you think in a way that the education system and that the traditional career path doesn't really encourage. Highly recommend it. It was one of the first books I read when I thought there is more that I want to get out of life than just the traditional career path. And finally on this list, Your Money or Your Life. The whole book is built on one mental model. Every dollar you spend is life energy. You traded hours of your life to earn that money. So when you spend on something, you're not spending money, you're spending hours of your life. And once you run the maths that way, you stop buying things you don't actually want because you start asking, what is worth the life energy that you sacrificed to buy that thing? So old book, but a very different take on spending. Then to become more ambitious and resilient, you're going to read these 4/5 books. And I love these because we rarely meet truly driven people in normal life. And so almost the only way you can get inside those people's heads is through books. So ones I recommend, Shoe Dog, one of my all-time favorites, very real, very raw. He talks about how he built Nike. He nearly went bankrupt multiple times, bank pulling lines, the IRS at the door, payroll he couldn't make, By the time Nike is the Nike that we know, you've watched him almost lose the whole thing multiple times. And it really kills this whole concept of overnight success that social media tends to fantasize about. If you're feeling demotivated and like you're putting in the work but not getting anywhere, this book will change that. As soon as you finish reading it, you will feel stupidly motivated and willing to take on any challenge that comes your way. Then Can't Hurt Me. This book is intense. Goggins grew up in poverty and abuse, and he became a Navy SEAL and went on to do things that genuinely defy human limits. And the reason it's on this list isn't the achievements, it's that the book always functions like a mirror. You start looking at your own life and asking yourself whether you're actually working as hard as you tell yourself that you are, or whether you're just very good at convincing yourself that you are. So depending on what point of your journey you're in, this book really builds your resilience and makes you realize that most things in life aren't actually personal and you can very likely get through it. Next is Steve Jobs. You probably know the story of Apple, the garage, the iPhone, how it all came about, but this really dives into Jobs himself, how brilliant he was and also how difficult he could have been to work for. What I really took away wasn't about Apple. It's about the taste and the obsession that he had, how he cares about the details no one else would have noticed. And that's why the products did and do as well as they do. What I've taken away really from it is that every single experience I have when it comes to work, whether it's something I enjoy doing or that I don't enjoy doing, is all adding up in a way that will make me a better rounded person. And finally, My Life in Full. Indra Nooyi was the CEO of PepsiCo for 12 years, and this is her looking back at her whole journey. What I really loved about it, and the book Start With Yourself also gives me a similar vibe, is that these books are unusually honest about what it takes for a woman to balance career and family. It's very honest about the trade-offs in a way that would probably be uncomfortable for most people to read and to hear, depending on which side of the conversation that you sit on. I found it very, very refreshing. It really pulls back the curtain on what usually makes someone look like they have it all, when really there are a collection of trade-offs they have made to get to the position that they're in. Then, to become a better communicator and to know what to say in different interactions, you are going to read How to Win Friends and Influence People, an old one, but a good one. It's basically a list of techniques that make people like you and win them to your way of thinking. It sounds a bit manipulative, but it actually just makes you a better conversationalist. The tactics are simple and obvious in hindsight. Things like ask questions about the other person, remember their name and use it. Don't tell them they're wrong, even where they are. These are core principles that still stand. In fact, the book was written in 1936, but human behavior hasn't really changed, and these principles still very much apply. Then I have on this list thinking fast and slow. The core idea is that your brain has two systems, one fast and intuitive, one slow and very deliberate. And most of your bad decisions happen when you let the fast one drive without realizing it. Once you can spot which system you're in, you start catching yourself making bad calls in real time. This is useful in almost every area of your life: work, relationships, with money, basically everywhere. Next, Never Split the Difference, written by someone who negotiated with kidnappers and bank robbers for the FBI. He teaches you how to use simple tricks to get what you want. So things like changing your tone of voice or the way you ask a question so that it doesn't make the other person defensive. So think about every time you've had to ask for a raise, haggle for a car price, or negotiate for something, even just deal with a difficult person. This book gives you a specific cheat sheet of things to do in that situation. So things like mirroring, which is just repeating someone's last few words to make them feel heard and keep them talking. Things like labeling, so naming an emotion out loud to instantly calm someone down. So for example, saying things like, it seems you are frustrated. So it's really attaching a feeling or a label to what they're going through. I definitely had a lot of aha moments reading this. Really recommend. And the next one is The Next Conversation. If you tend to leave a conversation thinking, I wish I said this at the time, or I wish I said that differently, or I didn't really get to convey what I really meant, this book is for you. Such an easy read and so actionable. There are so many frameworks and examples on what to say in what scenario and in what situation. It's a book where you can read one chapter and immediately apply something from it in your next conversation. So that is my list. If you've never read any of them and aren't really a reader, then read Atomic Habits first. A book all about sticking to habits, and it'll help you actually keep the reading habit going. If you like this video, you'll also like this video right here, which goes into even more depth about other money books that I've read, loved, and constantly rave about. See you there.